Okay. Have you ever gone through the air only to land on your neck? Maybe you picked somebody up in the air only to slam them back down again. If you enjoy the intense thrill of physical competition, or maybe you enjoy pushing your body past the limits, if you have had any part of these things, maybe you're psychotic. Greco-Roman wrestling. I have wrestled Greco-Roman before. I have been the thrower, and I have been the one being thrown. As a practitioner of Greco-Roman wrestling, I'm here to give you a little information. Today I'm here to inform you that Greco-Roman wrestling is a very tough sport that has a lot of history and some very specific rules. First, I will tell you why I think wrestling is tough. Then I will give you a brief history of the sport. And lastly, I will tell you some of the rules. So let's start out with what makes this sport so hard. Greco-Roman wrestling is unique and a very tough sport. I will tell you, as someone who has wrestled before, it's not easy. I'm going to give you a few reasons why I think it's so tough. In wrestling, you're expected to cut weight and still perform at your physical best. Cutting weight is an expression used by wrestlers that refers to losing weight. According to Mike Biscardia, rapid weight loss is potentially very dangerous to wrestlers, and estimates show that 25 to 67% of wrestlers use techniques such as exercise, food restriction, fasting, and various dehydration measures to lose weight. Practices are intense and demanding. Most wrestling practices contain lots of drilling, running, lifting weights, and full-on live wrestling with a partner. It's not uncommon for me, personally, to sweat through 2 t-shirts of practice. Wrestling is tough because it involves pain. This is to say, wrestlers can be put in painful moves which can potentially lead to injury. Some moves intentionally use pain as a motivator to control and manipulate your opponent. If you look at the PowerPoint I've handed out, you'll see some intense wrestling moves. It's easy to imagine that there is a potential for pain with such high amplitude throws. After talking about pain, cutting weight, and intense practices, let's talk about a little bit how Greco wrestling evolved. Greco-Roman wrestling has a rich history that transforms from the early Greeks on to present day. The sport of wrestling is very old, according to Travis Morgan. The forms of wrestling we know today, as Greco-Roman and freestyle, found their origins in lands on the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. As you see on the PowerPoint, I have a replica of an ancient statue depicting wrestling. Greco-Roman wrestling would change from its origins to what we know today. From info on Samarkand Wrestling Federation's website, at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century in Europe, modern Greco-Roman began appearing. It was mainly based in France, where wrestling was popular in the cities and suburbs. Hickok Sports states, true Greco-Roman wrestling, in which holds below the waist are prohibited, was introduced into the Olympics in 1906. From then on, Greco-Roman wrestling continues to evolve even as a sport today. Now that you know a little bit about how Greco-Roman wrestling got its start, it's time to learn some of the rules. Now, Greco-Roman wrestling has some very specific rules. No WWF stuff here. Well, no fake stuff anyway. What sets Greco-Roman wrestling apart from other styles of wrestling is a wrestler may not attack his opponent's legs nor use his own legs to trip, lift, or execute holds, states Bruce Gabrielson. This means there's a lot of upper body throws, which make Greco-Roman wrestling exciting to watch, but it also makes it more challenging to perform. It contains many crowd-pleasing moves. A Greco match consists of different periods. The winner of the match can be determined by various methods, in which in Greco-Roman wrestling matches either determined by points, fall, technical superiority, and in some few instances the match can also be ended by injury to fault or disqualification. A referee scores the match. If you refer to the last sheet on your PowerPoint, you will see the guide of a different hand signal that a referee uses to score the match. He uses these hand signals to communicate to the scoring table. According to badnewspanthers.com, back points are awarded more freely than in Greco-Roman wrestling and freestyle than they are in high school wrestling. It is only necessary to turn your opponent's back within 90 degrees of the mat. Takedowns, escapes, reversals are awarded 1 point, unless there is exposure of the back, which additional points are awarded. A move of high amplitude may also be awarded extra points. Well, we talked about how Greco-Roman wrestling has different rules than other wrestling styles. We've listed how a match can be finished and how some of the scoring works. So, now you know a little bit about Greco-Roman wrestling. You know a little bit how tough it is. I told you about some of the history, some of the rules. I didn't tell you how much fun it was, or is.